All right, we are live. Hey, Stacey, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am so good. I am so glad you're here. I've been bragging to some people. In fact, we were just talking about subtle brags. I've been bragging about you to some people because you have some of my favorite combo in a person. You have this amazing background in tech, which I want to dive into.
Mm-hmm.
You are now the CMO of Noodles and Company, one of my faves. Lord knows I love a good carb.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I'm really excited to kind of unpack some of the things you've done because you also have this love for data and behavior. And so that just, kind of speaks to all my favorite things.
Well, it's awesome to do this with you. And I would say that I guess back to the point about you having a tech background is that that's probably one of the reasons why I do love data. I was blessed to like spend a lot of my marketing career at Vail Resorts, which is like the pinnacle to me of using data to make really smart decisions. And so it's nice to be able to take what I learned there and be able to now bring it into Noodles and Company, but even I would say more, bring it into the restaurant space, just because I don't think a lot of restaurant concepts are doing it similar to how we're doing it, or even in a more sophisticated way. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's exactly it. And I was kind of looking into what Noodles and Company has really been doing since the pandemic. We've all had to shift. We know that's the biggest understatement of the world, right? Or the decade. But they doubled their digital sales in 2020. And that
Mm-hmm.
required some pretty big changes when everything else was already changing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes people go, well, what does marketing have to do with technology? What does marketing have to do with doubling sales? Because I think that role of, the CMO and the organization itself has really evolved.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you kind of put that together with what we call customer experience, I think a lot of minds are blown.
Yeah.
I don't know if we really look at the world like that or have been. So
Yes.
maybe let's start there. How are you marketing now? How are you driving, innovation and technology as a CMO post 2020?
Yeah, well, I'm going to actually start a little bit before the pandemic, only because I feel like Noodles and Company was already moving in the right direction in terms of building a marketing technology system that we could actually go to market in a more effective way and to be able to focus on digital marketing more than your traditional mass marketing. And so when they hired me, I've been doing digital for gosh, the majority of my career since the early 2000s. And I've grown up in the digital space, but paired with that, I was able to take my tech background with my digital background and then my commercial background, which they thought was a really appealing combination to be able to really kind of transform Noodles and Company as a digitally driven company. And so I started 2 months before the pandemic hit my first time as a CMO, and then the pandemic hit. And I would say the benefit is that we had already started on the path of being digitally focused.
Okay.
The one thing that I would say that we did very well early on in the pandemic, though, is we didn't just start blasting digital offers out. We took a moment to say, what are our guests feeling right now? And I actually used the change curve, if you're familiar with it at all, of like the where they're at, and then where they go down and hit like this valley of despair, and then they come back and they feel a little bit of hope. And so we really did kind of for the first 3 months leverage that curve to be able to kind of predict where our guest was, and then our messaging at that moment shifted based on where we thought people were. And so we started with our guest first and foremost, this assumptive insights. So we didn't know for sure because we couldn't research that fast, but we were assuming where they were. And then we put the offers and the messaging out immediately, leveraging our marketing technology stack to really reach the person where they were. And although, we hit rock bottom just like everybody else at the end of March, we climbed out actually pretty fast. And I think that that was because we shifted where we were placing those messages. So our marketing mix changed. we changed what the messaging was, and then we started to be more targeted. So we spent very aggressively spent about a month really digging into our audiences and segmenting them out, and then putting the right message and offer out to them. And so I think I would say that we're really proud of navigating that early part, because we did a nice job balancing the art of understanding and communicating aligns with the brand and what you want to get from the brand. But then we balanced it with the science of like really leveraging the data to know how we want to target and personalize.
And I love that. I absolutely love that. I think that's something that we see a lot of these really innovative organizations doing, is taking a step back. Not that you took a step back from the product, there was still plenty of innovation there, but that you really took, and what you started with, what you led with, is how are they feeling?
Mm-hmm.
What is going on right now, and how do we enhance that experience? So unpack that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because you talked about the curve, and I think that's just a piece of brilliance. By the way, we're like 3 minutes in and my mind's already blown. This is why I just so appreciate your time and love your thought leadership, because I don't know if a lot of folks know how to quite take that process the way you did.
Well, I think the one thing about taking that process is you have to be very, I think, aware of the different tools in the toolbox. One of them in that case, to me, I had just gone through the change curve because I had just switched jobs, and I was like, how do I understand where our consumers are? I would just say where people are.
Yeah.
And so I do think first and foremost, I would say is like leverage the tools that you have in your toolbox to be able to understand. And that could be your first party data. It could be just macro understanding of what's happening out there, or it could be where you're using social sentiment or some type of survey results just to kind of get a feel for where people are. In this moment, we couldn't do that as fast, so we used the change curve. But as the pandemic went along, we started to mine our own data a lot more. So we added survey comments, like to the survey that goes out after you visited us. We added survey comments in terms of how is the curbside experience working, or how comfortable are you of coming back into the restaurant? So we kind of knew when we could open up our dining rooms again. And then the murder of George Floyd hit. And then you're almost revisiting that change curve again, because people are going through another very monumental moment in culture. And so you had to think, okay, how do I want the brand to show up during this moment now? And how can we be thoughtful in that? And how can we even be leaders in that? And then, you kind of start to come out of COVID a little bit, but then it rises back up.
Right.
And you have to kind of think. So we just constantly kept saying, where can we get this information from that is at our fingertips, or where might we have to get more information from, which means then you have to research or you have to ask the questions so that you can pair those data pieces together to understand your guests, understands what's motivating them, what's impacting them, and then change how you go to market to them with the right message and the right offer.
Yeah. And I think, there's so much there to unpack. The fact that we brought up, George Floyd when we're talking about noodles, right? Or we're talking about food, that's the point. Yeah. That's when you start really, really evaluating what is the customer experience. What are they going through right now in their environment, in their world, when they come into our stores, or when they're engaging with us on their phones or on the internet, whatever it might look like. And, you said something else that's really important, is not just looking at one or two pieces of data. That you're really looking at the picture as a whole. And I think, a lot of times we can get kind of stuck with, we're seeing this one piece, or we're, this is really working. Let's keep doing what's working because we don't want to break, So how do you find a balance between iterating, innovating, leveraging data, including what's still working, but again, to that other side of the coin, innovating so that you're being a leader, not just a follower? How do you balance that?
That's a really good question and very timely right now, because I'm talking about this right now with the team, because I do think a lot of people are they're tired. And we continue to keep pushing and wanting to innovate because you're still trying to crawl out of a little bit of what happened in the last year. But then to your point, you're also wanting to be a brand that comes out of this even stronger and with greater affinity and loyalty to that brand. And so I think that it is by far, I would say right now is by far the hardest moment in my career in terms of what I've had to lead through. I know that that sounds weird because you would have thought 2020 was that. But I think what's difficult about it right now is that we have so much going on. We've got supply chain challenges, we've got labor challenges, we've got COVID restrictions going back into place. We have demand that is, in my opinion, I think unprecedented. Like, we didn't know we were going to have so much demand. So our sales are great, our digital sales are great, but the expectations are growing with our guests. So you've got these operational and business and marketing challenges all kind of colliding. And the reason I think that that is important right now is because it's like, how are we navigating innovation yet trying to stay above water?
Right.
And I personally, I'll answer it from a business and a leadership standpoint. I think it starts with leadership. I think it starts with transparency and authenticity and recognizing you can't do it alone, recognizing your mistake. You're going to make mistakes. I'm making mistakes every single day at this point, and I'm just waking up another day and trying something different and not making it to where it, halts my progress, but it's connecting with my team in an authentic way to where I can keep moving things forward for the business. And then on the other side of it, from the business perspective, I think that innovating, you have to balance how hard you can kind of push your team. You've got to innovate in small ways, because sometimes the bigger ways is more overwhelming. So how do you actually break it up into more micro moments that actually kind of build up into a macro change? But right now, we are definitely more focused on those micro moments because a large innovative initiative feels pretty daunting after 18 months of what the team has been going through. So I think you have to, between the two of them, I think you have to recognize that you're not perfect. You're going to make mistakes, but try and do those micro things to help build your brand and build the brand awareness and your innovation, but can still keep the team motivated and not burnt out.
Yeah, that's so good. And it's, you hit on the point of loyalty. I think, the more you're investing in your customer base, the more you're investing in your team, frankly, the more you're investing in yourself.
Yeah.
Right? The more loyalty you get, the better results you get. And I like how you talked about making micro changes.
Mm-hmm.
You're still iterating, but it's not this massive overhaul. You're still taking in data points, but maybe not completely shifting everything, because you need to be able to adjust. We talk about being agile and being able to respond, because at any minute, we've now learned things can really change.
Yeah.
And we have to be able to respond. And no longer is it things can just change from maybe, a supply chain standpoint, or things can maybe change from a political climate standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Literally anything could change at any moment from any direction. And we have to almost be ready for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that, I think there's a couple layers to that. One is that surround yourself with great team members and great leaders, because you can't know everything as a leader. So you have to make sure that you've got the right team in place. And my team is amazing. And they're actually the ones that are bringing forward those changes that are happening so quickly. They're paying attention to cultural moments, whether it be amazing or challenging, and they're saying we need to pivot. And so I think that that's an important piece. But I also think as a leader, you have to have the right team, but you have to help people navigate change. Change is so hard. And I thrive in an environment of change, but that can actually impact my team in a very negative way because I like to change a lot. And so you have to be very aware of where your team is at help them figure out what that end state will look like, and then help them navigate through that change. Change management is very, very hard and can be very jarring, but it's really important to have the right people helping lead through that change.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And I've even had this discussion with past, employers. I remember one very distinct conversation. We're sitting, as back when you had boardrooms and stuff. We're sitting in the boardroom, and at the time I led a sales team, and I remember saying, no, I need this player. She's an A player.
Mm-hmm.
And my boss at the time said, Sabrina, you can't build a team of A players. And that's when I knew I needed a new job,
Yes.
or at least a new boss. Because I probably my sole biggest skill is building really good teams of brilliant people around me, because you kind of learn that you don't have to have all the answers then.
Right.
You just have to be able to get the right answer faster than anyone else, and that's how you're leveraging your team. Yeah. But you brought up another great point, which is, because I love change too. I love your leap of, going to this role of CMO for the first time in the middle of a pandemic and all these things. I like challenges, they kind of drive me. Mm-hmm. But we have to be very aware of the impact that has on our team.
Yeah.
Because ultimately that impacts, how we're able to take care of our customers.
Yeah.
Right? Exactly. How we're able to really read what they need, give them the experiences that they're looking for. So it kind of has like this trickle up and trickle down at the same time.
Yep. Yeah, it's a great point. And I think that it does have to start with your employees, because the way you lead through change and the way that they can lead through change is going to then determine what that end result is for our guests. And if there's any chaos or confusion happening internally, it's going to manifest itself externally. And I do think that we've done a great job over the last 18 months of creating a very cohesive team and really focused on keeping the communication strong, keeping alignment amongst the team, so that we can then make sure that it's clear to our guests who we are as a brand, what we're trying to accomplish, why we're different. And that messaging and those points of alignment have been critical. And so it doesn't look very confusing right now, but it absolutely has to start with the employees.
Yeah. And you do such an amazing job of connecting all those dots. Because I think I think sometimes we go, what does a CMO have to do with customer experience, have to do with technology, have to do with the restaurant business?
Yeah.
But they're all so carefully connected that when done right, not all the time, as you mentioned, but more often than not, that's when you start to see this level of growth, this magnitude of growth that, obviously you've led it, at Noodles and Company.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there is definitely, number one, you have to understand the guest journey. And there's differing guests, right? You have very different guests across all of your different segments. You have to be able to understand that, but it takes time. It takes time. It takes, a hypothesis-driven approach a lot of times that you're going to prove through testing. And you have to be okay that some things are going to work and some things aren't going to work. And there are things that definitely have not worked for us. And then going back to change, we've pivoted so that we can try to drive more understandings. But we definitely don't, we're very proud of our results, but I actually am more proud when it's like, oh, that didn't work and we've got to change course. Because that learning is just as important as the strong results that you see. And so I think that understanding the guest is very, very, very important, but it's going to take some time to do that. And you have to be flexible and patient in doing that. And then it kind of comes back to, okay, if you understand your guests, then it does drive, how do you go to market? What technology capabilities do you need? What data infrastructure do you need? Because then it's answering these questions that you have in your head so that you can be more effective in your marketing.
Right. That's exactly it. Yeah, that's exactly it. And I knew we wouldn't have time. We never have enough time. Mm-hmm. It's such a pleasure to talk with you. I love how you bring such a human element to all of this too. Thank you for being so honest. We hit on the ideas of authenticity. It's hard for me to say this was hard. We had a lot of failures, but we had a lot of successes too. So I so appreciate that. I appreciate your insights. If there's something that people are looking for or they want to get in touch with you, is there a way that they can find you or follow you? Where can people find you?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn a ton because I think that's the best. I think there's great content when it comes to leadership, but anybody can ping me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn.
Good. All right.
Yeah.
Good to hear. Well, thank you, Stacey. We can't wait to see what's ahead for you. You and Noodles and Company. All right.
Yes, thank you. Nice seeing you.
Bye.
Bye.